Welcome, everyone, to the Tech Guide podcast, where we give actual advice to those wanting to break into tech or looking for their next gig. Students, imagine you're a college student sitting in the campus library, staring at rows and columns of data for a class project. You're trying to make sense of it, running some basic formulas, maybe even dabbling in Python for the first time. It's frustrating, but also exciting, like solving a puzzle. Now, fast forward a few years, that same student is working at a top tech company using data to solve real world problems, making an impact. The difference, they took the right steps early on, learning the right skills, finding hands on projects, and landing opportunities before graduation. And today we are joined by Dr. Jean Ray, a professor at Kennesaw State University, an industry expert who has helped countless students navigate this exact journey. Whether you're just starting out or trying to find that first data science job, Dr. Ray has the advice you need to turn a classroom spreadsheet into a career. Dr. Jean Ray, thank you so much for being here. So excited to have you on.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, my pleasure.
It's going to be so good. I'm excited to talk a little bit more about like data science, getting started and talk about that. But before we do that, someone might be tuning in for the first time. Okay, who is Dr. Jean Ray? Talk to us a little bit more about what you teach at Kennesaw and a little bit more of your journey.
Okay. So I'm a professor of data science and biostats. It's a weird title that kind of matches my background. I actually completed an undergrad, thought I was going to be a high school math teacher. Love it. Cigna Healthcare as a statistician. I just had the mathematics of statistics. It was, I don't know, really painful. Progressing, ended up getting a master's degree in mathematics, bounced around. Thomson Reuters actually funded a doctoral degree. Landed at the University of Louisville, did a PhD in biostatistics. Ultimately wanted to go back into teaching, but it landed in a think tank within Thomson Reuters. This was in the 2010, 2011.
Yeah.
Data science was not even really a title yet at that point. I was given a title of research scientist. Ultimately, came back to Kennesaw State. They were a very entrepreneurial, growing university.
Yeah.
And so we launched a PhD in data science in 2015, launched a center to connect those PhD students with industry research. COVID happened, left, went to work for a startup for a couple of years. Friend of mine retired and came back. So that's my, I don't know, academic, professional experience all in a short nutshell.
Yeah. No, that definitely sums it up well. So I know we've got someone that's amazing at math and everything, but you're also amazing at leading students. And I rewind that clock. Like when you were an undergraduate student, what were the most important skills or concept you wish you had focused on earlier? I want to get really actual for students and walk them through this path.
I think early on it was programming. So I landed at Cigna with very little programming skills, and they dumped a collection of SAS books on my desk and gave me like 6 months to teach myself how to program.
Oh, wow.
So programming is key. It's like the, I don't know, minimum sufficiency to mess with data. Then there's some interesting stories in there around why data science is a thing that we talk about later. And then I think what you learn otherwise is like how to present and engage with non-technical people. Those are probably the two most important skills, is programming and then those softer latent skills so you can build relationships.
Oh, that is super interesting. And nowadays as well, the programming piece, if you had to give students just starting out, they're like, okay, I want to do data science. I didn't really have an high school education with this, but okay, I hear you, I need to do programming. What programming language are you recommending them to learn?
I'm recommending Python or R. And with most companies, the legacy regulated companies, so like fintech or pharma, they're still using SAS. Everyone else is really using Python or R. The R has some challenges that Python doesn't, and they're complementary. It really depends upon the specific kind of area within data science.
Interesting.
But I really think Python is that minimum sufficient. Python, you can learn R or vice versa. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, I love it. I think that's really good. And another part of obviously data science is math and like statistics and like all the stuff that actually goes into data science. Like many students could be unsure whether they need that strong math or for data science here. Like what level of math and statistics do you think is necessary to succeed in this field?
I think it really depends upon your career aspirations and what you want to do. If you really want to be like a researcher or doing a high level natural language processing or large language models, then you're going to need a much deeper set of mathematical skills. It's all kind of matrix algebra and really intense computations. So if you're aiming to work at Google or Facebook and work on their large language models, then the expectations are really high. If you're just looking to land and work with data, then it's really more about those programming skills and being able to get in and understand the data and then develop a deeper set of skills over your career. That's the path I found.
Yeah. If someone's like really proficient at like programming, like decently. Their programming skills are definitely better than their data science skills. I want to talk about this specific example. Is there a career path you think that they should go down more because those strengths align? Does it matter? Would love to hear that.
Yeah, definitely. So there's a whole breadth of careers now.
For sure. Yeah.
So there's like the data engineer. So if someone who's much more technical, maybe doesn't like the data exploration and those sorts of
Yeah.
things, likes more connecting the pipelines and the databases, then that's a career path. A lot of teams will have just a hardcore programmer. In fact, I just had a conversation with the Veterans Affairs. So they've got a set of researchers, and then they actually hand the concepts over to programmers. And
Mm.
that's much more of a specific skill set, but they're actually implementing what the researchers has envisioned and in writing those programs. So maybe if you're a computer science background or you just really writing code is what you really enjoy, then there's definitely an opportunity there.
Interesting. Yeah, I think there's so much. I want to flip that back on the other side there as well. If you're really good at like statistics and like math, like but you're not very good at programming, like obviously there's huge industries here, vary so
Mhm.
much, but like where would you recommend them to go down?
So I think that person is probably looking at more that analytics, data science, statistics track.
Okay.
And so that it's more about the data explorations, trying to uncover the insights that the data has. And there's tons of other people that are prepping the data, developing the pipelines, doing all that pre-work for you. And
Yeah.
then you're really plugging into the data, trying to gain that domain expertise, that business knowledge. So that way you can connect that with what you're seeing in the data and then
Yeah.
ultimately present that back to the stakeholders that are probably non-technical people, probably super brilliant business people that are
Yeah.
looking for those insights and someone they can trust.
Yeah. That is really good. And obviously, there's one things that you're interested in, but it's also another thing to be good at. And one thing to learn what you're good at, what you're interested in, is hands-on experience here. So, if a student is just starting their career and wants to break into data science, what are the best ways to gain that hands-on experience while still in school? Projects, internships, research. Talk to us about that.
Oh, that's a great question. So what I recommend my students is to get involved with the professors that are doing quantitative research. They don't have to have data science titles.
Yeah.
I've got colleagues that are in engineering and College of Health and Human Services. They're all collecting data and trying to figure out how to analyze it. And so if you can get involved in one of those projects, maybe connect it with a statistician or data science professor to help give you some guidance, you can end up with poster presentations, conference presentations. You can develop that technical skill while you're
Interesting.
involved in a project in a domain that you're interested in.
Yeah, I think that is really good. And when do you think is like the best time to get hands on? Obviously, freshman year, like you can strive for it, and you definitely should strive for it. But what would you say is that wheelhouse year, like when you should really start doing
I
it?
think that really depends upon the specific school that you're at. Some schools have this incredible research infrastructure and can easily loop in a freshman and plug them in. Other schools like KSU, that there's a certain level of skills and kind of knowledge that you need to develop, even just who the professors are. And that's usually like sophomore,
Yeah,
junior year when you identify a project or a professor you want to work with. And then just reach out to them, have that conversation and see if there's something that they have that may be a side project or a main project they can plug you into.
yeah, yeah. And speaking of just obviously go to professors as well, but like maybe also look and build something for yourself here that you can bring into internships as well. I want to talk about like, what are some good just side projects that students could work on, especially in that sophomore junior year.
Yes. So there's a breadth of them. You
Yeah,
can go
so
to
much. Yeah,
Kaggle is a good source of data sets and
love
problems and
it.
so forth. Even if you don't want to compete, you can at least get access to the data sets. For instance, there's that people who survived the Titanic and trying to model that. Like that's a really generic problem, but it gets you
Yeah.
into data and using software. I had one individual in an undergrad. The class was taught around R and he was
Okay.
doing everything in Python and they would even write functions. I don't know. We would discuss some transformation. And then he would write a Python function that would do it and then be so happy when it worked and would try to expand it. He was
Yeah,
just
yeah.
always thinking about ways to take these skills and grow them. I think that's probably the biggest secret to this is just figure out what it is that you're interested in. And then how
Yeah.
do you expand those skills into something that's marketable?
Yeah, I think that's what's like really important. What are you interested in? Like finding some sort of like data project that you can work on. Do you have any examples that come to mind from like past students that worked on projects that like really stood out to you? I'd love to get some inspiration for people
Oh
listening as
man,
well.
that's a great question. So I actually ended up with one young lady. So at Kennesaw State, we run this analytics day. So it's like an inverse job fair. And so employers come, they look at probably 50 to 70 student posters. And so she was using, there's a national survey called the Behavioral Risk Factor Surveillance System.
Mm,
And I don't remember exactly the phenomenon she was looking at, but she had just done some incredible analytics and she was an undergrad, I think a psychology major, and ended up with a
interesting.
job offer on the spot because of how she positioned the results and the analytics and the conversation that she had with the employer. It was just an incredible kind of everything worked perfectly for her and it created an incredible opportunity.
Oh, dude, that is so cool. Yeah, I think like one of the benefits, because one thing that stood out when I was applying for jobs back when I was like a junior, like my senior year of college, is I started podcasts. That's when I started like podcasting and everything. Like being able to bring that to companies, like they were just like so impressed. Like junior, senior in college is like taking on initiative and like building a side project. I think that's like a perfect way for someone to get ahead if they are looking to get ahead in the job market.
Exactly. And I think so there's several things in there. One is figuring out opportunities to get involved. And
Yeah,
so if the school has some sort of poster contest, if there's not, there's like undergrad research opportunities. There's all sorts of these opportunities now with funding.
yeah.
And you can go to conferences and present and then engage in the people who are interested. That becomes your community and that becomes entrance into entry level positions.
Yeah, so good. And he also talked a little bit about Kaggle. Talk to us more about like competitions. Like how beneficial are those for students? Is it something that you can actually bring to an interview and people are like, yes, I'm super impressed you did that. Talk to us about that.
So I think if you're thinking about trying to position yourself for a
Yeah.
job, obviously an internship or something that is an employee employer type relationship is a little bit stronger to put on your resume. But if you don't have that, and a lot of people don't,
Yeah.
then you want to find projects, maybe Kaggle or something. You want to make a portfolio that you can then bring that helps to show what you can do. One of the first persons that I ever hired, this was a long time ago, but she actually brought a physical portfolio of code examples, and they were
What?
mostly like class projects and stuff. But
Yeah,
then
that's
when you're
cool.
asking her technical questions, she would just open it up. Oh yeah, here's an example where I did exactly that, and here's what it did. And so it gave you the confidence that you were making a good hire.
Oh, that is so good. I've never heard that advice actually of doing exactly that. That is a really good advice there. And as like you can do the competitions and everything, you can stand out. But of course, there's so many different career paths in data science. Those analytics, machine learning, biostatistics. Like, how can undergraduates figure out which areas of data science best fits their interests?
Oh, that's so tough. I think you've got to explore the opportunities.
Yeah,
If you're at a school that has a data science program, then get engaged with those classes, figure out what it is that resonates with you. Sometimes they're going to be more computer sciencey until you can get into the coding of natural language processing or large language models. Other times there may be a statistics program that repurposes data science. So you may get
yeah,
into biostats or probability and statistics. And so it's just exploring all these different opportunities. And just because your school doesn't have a data science program doesn't mean they don't have classes that are really data science. They just haven't been
yeah.
appropriately branded. And
Oh,
so that's where you get to explore. Maybe you'll take a CS class and see if they're actually doing NLP, look through the catalog and go have conversations.
yeah, that is so good. I think basis of a lot of this has just been like go have conversations. I want to talk about the program about at Kennesaw. We talked about it before we actually started recording here. Talk to us about that program that you guys are offering, like some of the courses that you guys have in there.
Oh, great question. So philosophically, we didn't want to create like statistics 2.0. And so all of these programs, we've got an undergrad, a master's and PhD truly in data science. We had one of the first PhDs in data science in 2015. And we always try to connect the student with industry in some way.
Yeah,
Just because that's truly where data science is. The history of statistics is sad. It
yeah,
became the mathematics of statistics that few people read and few people understand. So we did not want that to happen to data science. And so that's one of the key things that kind of separates us is this either through capstones or
interesting,
at the PhD level, these like research experiences that are really funded by industry. And then those students are plugged into those research environments. We do
interesting.
something similar with master's degree, but not quite as formalized. So
Yeah,
that way we've got students at Equifax and some of these other companies that are just huge supporters of Kennesaw because of that kind of applied aspect. So at the curriculum level, like the class level, I don't think it's really about the specific classes or so forth. There's
yeah,
some philosophy buried in there, but it's really this idea of taking something that could be very theoretical and learning the applied aspect and then
yeah.
actually applying it and figure out how do you take this information or data and turn it into something that's appealing and informative.
Yeah. What should people look for once is that what students should look for if they're looking into a master's like PhD program, like that real like hands-on experience? I'd love to talk about that as well.
I think so. I think if you end up in a program that's very theoretical,
Yeah.
That program's probably training you to be a faculty member, and not everyone in data science wants to be or has to be a faculty member. That's
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
different now. I'd say probably 50% or more of our PhD grads land in industry. One of our kind of award-winning alumni, she's on our website with several awards. She went to work for a very large company in their research environment. Her salary was very high.
Yeah.
Um, and it was just because of those kind of practical research experiences. So I think if I was in my 20s looking at graduate degree or even
Yeah. Yeah.
undergrads in this space, I would look for application, those industry academic partnerships, and really the mentorship that is key to making this, because statistics is still an apprenticeship program. And
Yep.
so even data science has to have that. And so if you've got that appropriate curriculum with some sort of apprenticeship and application, that's like the perfect program.
Dude, yeah, so good. And I want to ask as well, I think I might have got ahead of myself, so apologize, listeners here. Like, how should a student decide whether they need a master's or PhD in data science? Is a bachelor's degree enough for a successful career in the field? Or like, how do you know if you need that master's or PhD?
That's a great question. I think it really depends upon each person's career journey and your aspirations. So there's some really good positions with just an undergrad. The undergrad's going to start off at kind of that data analyst, maybe junior data scientist position. You're going to be supporting other people, or you're going to be learning pipelines and those
Yeah.
sorts of things. If you end up in more of that engineering aspect, that's like your wheelhouse, then you don't even need further graduate education. It becomes more about the micro credentials, the certificates and so forth that help you build that pipeline. If you end up in that career field and you're like, oh my gosh, I want to learn more about large language models and how
Yeah.
easy they
Yeah.
are, then you may want to consider graduate degrees, especially if you want to do research in that space. I think the
Yeah.
ultimate decision is if you want to do research or not.
Okay.
And that kind of leads to two different roles. It used to be graduate degrees were required for kind of leadership roles in industry. I'm not even sure that's true anymore, because there's so
Interesting.
many just uniquely qualified individuals that are managing teams and managing projects. So
Yeah.
it's really about the opportunities you create as you develop your skills.
Yeah, what I think is so cool about like the data science realm is it is changing so quick. Like you said, like even 2010, 2011, like it wasn't even really a term. Like your term was, I think, was like research analyst or something. Or
Mhm.
I think that's so promising about the field is like there are going to be so many more opportunities, and it's so fast changing, and people are really like hiring for data science right now as well.
Correct. Yes. And then there's a change. Before it was highly trained or the scientist level person to develop the models and build
Yeah.
the techniques. And now there's a switch in the market to more junior level individuals.
Mm.
And it's to build out the full team. And they're also trying to continue to build that pipeline and kind of reduce cost. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's where someone with just an undergrad can be way cheaper than someone with 10 years experience and a PhD.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I know what's also making just work cheaper is now the prevalence of AI. And of course, like it has to be asked, like, how are you seeing AI being plugged into like data science? Because is it something that undergrads should be worried about AI like taking their jobs? I'd love to hear like how they're complementing each other.
So I wouldn't worry about it taking your jobs. It is going to change the marketplace.
Mm.
For instance, I see any of these large language models as personal assistants. A company that I'm aware of was trying to figure out, how do you move coding from one language to another? The initial idea was to have someone with the deep expertise in both languages code the second. ChatGPT was launched in like November 2022. That following
Yeah.
summer, an intern was hired, and that intern used ChatGPT to translate the language. And it was pretty effective. It needed someone to go in and review it and debug it, but it was a really effective way to use that as a bridge. And so it created an opportunity for an intern that was basically managing that kind of
Super
conversion
cool.
process instead of someone with a PhD who knew both languages.
That is so cool. Yeah, I think there's so many like different usage cases for it, and even like large language models, but like even like math and like statistics, I feel like
Mhm.
ChatGPT is viewed as like your friend now in it to help you solve these very complex problems and just have to be another
Exactly.
brain for you, essentially.
Yep. And in fact, Stanford launched Storm AI that is, it can do lit reviews and so forth. And it's
So good.
more reputable than ChatGPT because it has a tendency to hallucinate.
Yeah.
Where this is actually hitting the web and refining a corpus to
Yeah.
subtrain
Yeah.
itself and then create a much better model. It's really an interesting approach.
Yeah.
So I do see it as a personal assistant. And I do think like the equivalent of when cars came on the market, there were a whole bunch of people who were displaced from making wagons and caring for
Yeah.
horses, but there
Yeah.
were other opportunities making cars. And so I think we're going to see something like that where there's just a shift, but jobs aren't necessarily going to go away.
Yeah. I think like you need to view AI as like a compliment. Like you need to find a way to put it into like your workflow and everything. I think a lot of students are doing that. I'm sure,
Mhm.
obviously, I'm not in school anymore, but I'm sure a lot of undergraduate students are using ChatGPT for some sort of homework help already, I imagine.
Yes.
I won't ask you a question specifically about that, but I do want to ask you like questions about if a student is a junior, senior, what are a few concrete steps they should take like right now to set themselves up for success in a career in data
So
science?
now there's all kinds of really available or really cheap. Let's say you've got a business degree and some minor or small set of technical skills, and you're like, oh, I really want to get into analytics or data science. You'd have to invest in yourself and go find some free programming courses, learn how to do Python. Then what's more important is how do you engage with data using those tools?
Mm,
And then hopefully through that business or whatever the other background is, that maybe isn't as technical, you've got some sort of domain expertise that you can actually apply those skills in. And then that becomes your value proposition is, hey, I know business and I have these technical skills. Let me put these together for you and let's solve problems.
interesting. Yeah, I think there's so much. That's like the power of data science. Like you can solve so many problems. And of course, when it comes to data science, really calling back, like one of the first things you said here is you have to know how to program and everything, but it's also the human aspect of data science and be able to like connect with people and like work with people. Talk to us about the importance of that a little bit more. I really want to hit in because I think that we've talked a lot about the technical stuff here, but there is soft skills that need to be learned to succeed in
There
this field.
are. So, but I don't want to just stick with a story. Some people in the data science field, it's all about storytelling. I
Mm,
see it more as a spectrum. And so there's a spot for the hardcore programmer that has no desire to engage with people.
yeah.
And then there's the other end of the spectrum. There's the person who has incredible soft skills and has
Yeah.
developed some technical skills and then everything in between. So if you think about really as a data scientist, what you're selling is integrity because ultimately
Mm,
you as a business person are trusting that I'm making good decisions and can present that in such a way that it's understandable to someone with a non-technical background. So the stronger those skills are and the closer you are to the client, either internal or external, the more valuable you are to the company because you're able to connect with the client. You're able to articulate, here's what we're seeing and here's what's going on. And ultimately you build that trust.
I love it. Yeah, I think that it's one thing if you are really going to stand out in your career, no matter the field, like a lot of it comes back to being able to work with people and building trust and whatnot. Last question before we close out. This has been so good. If you give one more piece of general advice to undergraduate students pursuing a career in data science, what would it be?
Wow. One piece of advice. That's so hard. One piece of advice. I think identify what part of data science you're passionate about. I don't think saying, hey, that makes a lot of money and therefore I want to go that way is like the best way. There's other things that may resonate with your passion because there's going to be really challenging days. And so it's making sure that you're interested in it and push through those challenging days. There's going to be project deadlines that are missed. There's
Yeah.
going to be people who are dissatisfied with your work. And without that extra, something extra in it for you, you're going to give up and switch careers because it's just going to seem like it's hard.
No,
So I think the same thing I would tell my kids, just make sure that it's something that you want to invest in and you want to do.
I love it. So good. Dr. Gene Ray, thank you so much for joining us today. It sounds like, oh my gosh, such good insights. I need to learn more about him and connect with him. Where can they connect with you and talk with you?
Oh man. So I'm on LinkedIn. You can look me up. It's Gene Ray. And then make sure it's my dad is also on there with the same name. So make sure
Yeah.
it's the one with Kennesaw State. You can come to the Kennesaw State website if you go to the School of Data Science. There's a faculty profile. I'm also on the PhD program as the program director. So multiple ways you can reach out and I'll always respond to emails.
Love it. And everyone, those links will be down below. Dr. Gene Ray, one more time, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate your time.
Yeah. Thank you.